The one thing that, so when I came back to Namibia in 2019, that was around September, then I went back and then this whole thing happened in November, just as I was about to graduate. I then made the decision that I'm coming back. If I can't be the president of the country to fight corruption, and then I'll have to find another way to fight it. Yeah. So I came back as a freelance journalist, and I was lucky enough for the Namibian to take me in. And I have since been freelancing for the Namibian and was based at Walvisbay. A lot has happened. That's between 2020 and 2021, 2022. And in the midst of the COVID-19 and everything else, we continued to soldier on. Now, my topic is on the lessons learned by us as journalists and also civil society, because we worked a lot with civil society as well as the trade unions. So for journalists, the three groups actually, we are intertwined. We cannot exist without the other one. The journalist's duty is to guard the truth. So we were out here in Walvisbay, especially because I heard there was a complaint that everything is happening in Windhoek, but we were out here in Walvisbay, a group of women. I would like to dedicate this 1 minute or 30 seconds for them to stand up. Especially the one person that has been writing about Fishrot, but we did not know that it was Fishrot there or something was happening. And that is Evelyn de Klerk from the New Era newspaper. And also we have Renata Rengura from the NBC. She will be out there in the mist and the dust and the wind. You know, Walvisbay's weather today is very nice. And at the time, she had a baby also, but she was out here reporting. I also have my other comrade in arms, that's Rudy Owen from Namib Times. He would also be out there. He's a senior, but he didn't give up. He would be between sports, because he's a sports journalist by trade, but he will be between sports, and he was also determined to write about the Fishrot. Now, in 2017, just wanting to quote something that happened already, and that's why I was dedicating the time to my colleague Evelyn. She wrote an article where the then Minister of Fisheries, Bernard Esau, said that he detested corruption. And this was at the anti-corruption, at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Corruption workshop for the Ministry of Marine, Fisheries and Marine Resources, as well as the Anti-Corruption Commission. At that workshop, the minister said, "I detest corruption. The sector should not be labeled even if they say I am corrupt. Therefore, I am urging my officials to continue carrying out their duties despite the perceived perception of corruption within the sector and ensure that all benefits from our natural resources are benefited by all." And then 2 years later, yeah, we know what happened. Yeah. Now, okay. Now, as journalists, we should demand. Let me just go to the next one. Okay. The duties of journalists. So, just to clarify it, besides exposing corruption, ours is also there to inform and educate the nation. So we also act as a counterforce against erosion and of accountability. So when a person is not accountable, we are there to hold our leaders accountable. So the evolution of technology is that is where we also had learned a lot of lessons, because back in the days when Tangeni was still a journalist, to get any information, you have to go to the library, then you have to go to the next office, you have to go to the next office. But with the evolution of technology, we were able to do quite a lot. And we were able to collaborate also as journalists. The picture below you will not be able to see. That is three of us, myself, Leandra, and Evelyn, working on an article. Because at some point we also realized that it wasn't about scooping the other person. Some of the articles we had to work together because I could have some information that relates to something that you have and I don't have it. So sometimes we really worked together in that respect, but also because we also learned from the pioneers of those that exposed the Fishrot. Shinobene, my colleague, he worked with journalists from Iceland and also some of the Al Jazeera guys, and they were able to then shift through 30,000 different documents to be able to write the article of Fishrot. It wasn't easy, so sometimes we need to collaborate to do our work. The other part was also to work with other organizations, and the IPPR comes to mind a lot because they've been writing a lot on corruption and how, and also in assisting us as to where to look for things, for information. And also to work with experts. I remember one day I wrote a message to Professor Roman on something within the fishing industry, and he said to me, if you're brave enough, you can go ahead, but I would prefer you not to do this for your own safety. Yes. Repeat. If you're brave enough, you can go ahead, but I would rather that you don't do it for your own safety. Because the fishing industry it's a monster. It's a monster. It's not a. For years, journalists were not able to write about the fishing industry, but since Fishrot, we were able to challenge the leaders in the fishing industry. Initially, we were only invited to the trips when the president was coming to show his counterparts from other countries. He would take them around the fishing industry, fishing companies, and so on. The only other time that you would see journalists going to see captains of fishing industry is when the minister is addressing them, or if they are handing over some tin fish to a community claiming that they are doing CSI. Yeah. The other part around the Fishrot, the lessons that we have learned is also with the Fishrot scandal actually made us reflect on corruption and accountability, because there's so much that's happening still, and my previous the previous speakers have alluded to a lot of the things that is being done in the fishing industry. It hasn't stopped, and especially the act that allowed the minister to do what he did, it remains in place. The Marine Act remains in place. There's a lot of secrecy in the industry. Up until now, I think the last annual report that I have seen was 2013. We don't see the annual reports of the fishing industry, but it's something that we keep probing, but as journalists we have learned also different ways on how to get information. I eventually got the copy of, it's the soft copy, it's not published yet, the annual report that was written for 2018. But we have to continue digging, we will continue digging. The other part is to safeguard whistleblowers. You will notice that a lot of our articles will refer to a source within the industry or a fisherman who told us something and wants to remain anonymous. So we have to also learn to protect the whistleblowers. Because it's not about me wanting to put somebody out there, because I know, like I said, Dr. Roman said, if you're brave enough, you can go ahead, but for your own safety. So we still have a lot of fishermen now that are still in hiding after the Fishrot saga. There's one that has reached out to me 3 weeks ago because he's been trying to seek protection everywhere, and he's not getting it, and he claims that he's been threatened, his life is in danger. He texts me from 5 different numbers in one day. That's how deep it's getting. But our duty also as journalists, what we also have discovered the lessons is that the way we have boosted the civil society and the unions' voices. Because right now the unions have a lot, they actually command a lot of respect in this town. But it's, the whole of Walvisbay is actually one of the towns that understood its democratic right to stand up about anything. 2020 throughout COVID, there was not a week that went by within COVID that the people of Walvisbay were not protesting. Whether it's a single person, whether it's a group of people, whether it's fishermen, the people in the fishing industry now can stand, you know, the way they just demonstrate, because it's the only other way to have their voice heard. But you only hear it in Walvisbay. You don't even hear people saying, oh, it's again Walvisbay. But they know what democracy means for them. Lessons for civil society. The one thing that also happened while we were, as journalists, while we were working, is we also realized that civil society has also started to stand up and to speak up. There's a lot of organizations, a few organizations, maybe registered or unregistered, that will come to us and they will speak up and they will tell us stories. They will give us information. The Fishrot scandal also highlighted the need for transparency. And civil society, unfortunately, we have to continue demanding for transparency within the fishing industry. Tangeni has alluded to the fact that few people benefit, but we don't know who the few people are. Rui mentioned there's 300 millionaires living in Walvisbay. Sometimes you wonder, is it really 300? Or is it because people use the address for Walvisbay when they are registering for fish quotas? But it's because, but we have to continue talking about this. Civil society needs to continue helping us to find, to write about what is happening, because we can also not be everywhere. Yeah. But the need for transparency in the fishing industry, it's something that we will continue to ask. I think Slugger, oh sorry, not Slugger, that's what we know him by, Daniel Imbili. When he mentioned the issue around he mentioned something around the offices being in Windhoek, but the issues are happening here. We have been trying to get information out of the Fisheries office here. You don't get information here because the people here themselves, they don't know what's going on. They will tell us that the minister will be in Walvisbay, but he will not go to the office. And I think he's actually here or he's coming. But the people here don't know what's going on. The one day they called us in and they explained to us, they gave us a file of 2009, I think, when the Minister Iyambo was still the minister, and they said to us, look, in the office here where the inspectors are, here's the file. We knew which company had so much water, which company has depleted their water for the year, how much they caught so far. We knew all of this, but now they are working in isolation. You are a fishing inspector. All you do is go to the vessel, fill in how much the vessel has caught, you send that document to Windhoek. You don't know how much the company is entitled to. You don't know how much they have caught so far. You just have to send the file to Windhoek. And also, when he spoke about the issue around bycatch, we actually have discovered that there is a lot of fish that you will find every day in our fishing shops. The Alfonsino, the angelfish, everybody in Namibia actually has eaten an angelfish by now. Kangulu, and the reds. The fishing companies are catching this fish every year. Every month, actually, you will find angelfish in the fish shops. But I was just informed that they are not a fisheries. There's no total allowable catch, so they remain bycatches. Now with bycatches, ideally your bycatch should only be 5%. It's an unwritten rule, but it should be 5%. Now you will find that a whole vessel, 400 metric tons of fish is angelfish. In December you saw, I think there was boxes in Hangana. There was boxes of angel, and they were going for $300 for 10 kilograms in December. It's the same with reds. You will find it there, but it's how come that these fishing companies are allowed to do so much bycatch? And actually last year the fishing companies made about 48 million from bycatch. And your bycatch, you don't pay royalties on it, you don't pay taxes on it, you pay a small fee, which is less than $2, I think, per fish. Yeah, so the rest of the money goes to the fishing companies. But also in general around transparency. We do not know who are the actual people who vote us. Especially now that they are forced to be in PTY companies. Because now you just register the company, the shareholders, we do not know them. Sometimes even if you go to BIPA, you will only find one person, which is the director. Because BIPA's form says directors, it doesn't ask you for shareholders. So the share certificates you will never find. So those are some of the issues that civil society needs to question also. So basically I've spoken around it. There is one of the pictures that I took, that was 2001 when we had the anti-Independence Day march in Walvisbay. They were going on around Fishrot. They're saying no bail, but it shouldn't end here. It should continue. So engaging with democratic processes, staying informed and holding officials accountable are essential tools citizens should have to ensure that resources are managed responsibly and that corrupt practices are curtailed. So for trade unions, what we have learned, apart from negotiating wages, we have also picked up a lot of safety issues, exploitation of our fishermen. I'll just go to the next slide. It's just you can't see them properly. These are fishermen from one of the fishing companies. They were actually fired after this article came out. All they were asking for is reduced working hours, because they work long hours. They were showing us their hands because they work on the long line, on the hake. Some of them, their feet were so swollen because they stand for like 14 to 18 hours a day. You are allowed to rest for 1 or 2 hours. There's one of their colleague who's still in hospital for about 3 years now in Windhoek, because he has lost mobility. Some of them have lost their fingers because fatigue kicks in and you're just doing things, and they say sometimes you just don't know, and you're supposed to cut the fish heads off with this machine. There goes your finger. And when the finger goes, they call us again. This year we had 2 who were also fired after the story came out. So the union needs to take those issues of exploitation, safety, and dignity for our workers. Because even now, during this, it's not after, Fishrot is still ongoing. Our fishermen, besides staying in shacks, just their general life. It's a pity when you see those guys coming out of sea, they are not normal. You can literally see they are not normal because there is no psychosocial support for them. The unions alone cannot do it because the union only know what they know, but the health sector needs to come in. So for journalists, trade unions, and the citizens, we should unite for the quest for justice, transparency, and sustainability. The scandal has given rise to collective resolve for action. The lessons learned, Tangeni has mentioned a few lessons from what as a nation we have learned, but as the three pillars of society, which is now the trade unions, the civil society, and the journalists, there are calls, the lessons are calls to arm, urging us to safeguard the integrity of the public institutions and protect the vulnerable. We can't be out here going to our offices and going home. We have to continue holding the offices accountable. If we do not call for the reform of the Ministry of Fisheries, there's little that we can do. Tangeni has just also alluded to the fact that fishing companies are going into the 200 ISO bar. I know currently they are doing a study, but because there are other organizations that also comes into play, because we can't be at sea. But organizations that run surveillance on vessels and so on, they need to be able to come out as well. Because we have learned, there was one time that the fishing industry actually were threatening the fisheries observers or demanding that, you don't have to send observers with us to sea. And then you hear the Department of Marine saying that they sometimes switch off the devices or the tracking devices on vessels. So when they switch it off, the guys at the demand site, which is the Department of Marine, they can't tell where the vessel is. So it can be within the 200. And especially the fishing, the freezer vessels. Because they throw throughout the day, they don't stop. It's unlike the Persenas, which goes for specific shoals of school of fish, but the others continue to do as they do. But on that note, I thank you.